Hello and welcome to The Point. It is beautiful outside. You are loving and enjoying the new weather, the shift in energies, the new flowers, the new growth, all the other things that come. And today you're going to be able to really dig your teeth into the idea of change and all of the beliefs around change. And you're going to have a solid understanding of how change can be something that is new, different, and fresh. Maybe even, you might say, potentially easy. Now, I had somebody ask to talk more about change and to kind of dive into the challenges and struggles that come with it. And it's come up in a number of conversations, and certainly an awesome thing to dig into. It's when I was first really introduced to a theory of change, in that there's stages and process to it. It was with the Prochaska's model of change that started with as a way of helping people stop smoking. They didn't tackle an easy or light challenge when they took on the idea of how to quit smoking, how to help people with smoking cessation. So, what came out of this was a process called the stages of change. And the stages of change are great to help build awareness and do other things. And, there's and we'll just walk through those really quickly for you. However, I want you to understand something walking into this. By the end of this time, you're going to have a new framework for what change looks like. You're going to have a new understanding of the simplicity that it could be should you focus on the right pivot points, the right things that really make the most change. A really good question that you can ask yourself is, what's the number one thing I could do that would make the most impact or the most difference in allowing this change to happen and take place? That's a great question to ask yourself. Some clients will write that down, or even friends of myself will write that. You can write that down before you go to bed at night and get yourself in that state so that when you sleep, your unconscious mind can work with you to come up with an answer of what is that thing. Last week you listened to the ideas around the unconscious mind, and listening to and opening our channels and listening to our intuitive sense and our intuitive notions, connecting into that collective wisdom. Well, that's one of the times that we can do that. When all of our frontal lobe, all of our cognitive reasoning, and all the many, many, many thoughts that we're having on a conscious level, we go to sleep and we stop those. And the rest of us goes into work around healing and restoring our bodies and our minds and everything about us. So that's the time when you can actually allow that filing system to come to life for you. So stages of change start with pre-contemplation. And pre-contemplation is, you have no clue that anything has to happen. You're just moving forward in life as if nothing's wrong and as if what you want is happening. Then something happens and you begin to contemplate that there might be something better. Now, you can dream through all the scenarios that might take you from pre-contemplation to contemplation, and that's great. There are many ways of doing that. You can actually help yourself, once you know that, is by looking at things you haven't considered before. One of the keys to change, one of the keys to improvement, and one of the keys when we're moving companies forward or individuals forward into change, it's to consider what hasn't yet been considered. Think of what's in the pre-contemplative stage that would make the biggest difference in your life to help you get what you want, right? So there's one of those things. Next, you go into contemplation. So now you have the idea and you know you want to, you're considering all the ideas and all the things. Well, from there, a lot of people move right into action. They contemplate, they come up and they just decide they're going to do something one day, but that skips a very critical stage. And if you read the book, The Stages of Change, or the newest version of that, you have very clear understanding. There's a lot of really good information in there about why the planning stage is so important. So you can move if you're working from an intentional space. So here's another rule or law or it's not law, but it's an anchor in the universe of truth that says that if you do something intentionally, it's better. You have more chance of making it really happen. So we talk a lot about using our intention purposefully and specifically so that we don't just end up somewhere. Well, this is the same thing. Moving from contemplation to action with a plan is about intentionality. It's about being intentional and moving forward specifically. And if you're being intentional, you can then make small adjustments along the way, or start certain parts of it over or the whole thing over and reapproach with minor adjustments, which is, again, where where the idea of designing your strengths come in, is using short-term goals and stepping forward. Well, regardless of the size of goal, having that planning phase is very important, and it's been proven that statistically, if you skip the planning stage, you have less chance of actually sustaining change. So then you go through planning into action, and from action, there's actually now new awarenesses that happen. And when you take action, you have all types of things that come up that you get to then learn from, and new awarenesses, and sometimes that actually brings you back into planning so that you can readjust, and that's part of it. But as you take action, you go from there into where you get into maintenance. And oftentimes, and it's very laid out in the book, but oftentimes what I've seen in real life of what happens is during action, sometimes there's some recycling of part or all of the old behaviors. And sometimes there's some wisdom in that. But regardless of that, when you get through action and you get into maintenance, that's the other place where some recycling can happen. And sometimes that becomes judged and criticized as something really bad, that you weren't able to make it happen. And that's absolutely not true. When you recycle is oftentimes the most impactful moment to actually learn the lesson, because you have an increase of awareness of all of the data. Your unconscious mind and your conscious mind has stored all these new files on what it was like to go without and what were those benefits. And we oftentimes don't understand what those benefits are until we recycle a behavior or a part of it or a part of something, and then realize, I forgot that it felt this way, and I forgot that it created this situation, and I forgot now. And so then it becomes much more advantageous. So recycling is oftentimes an additional learning that helps anchor the new state that we're moving into. So being non-judgmental with yourself in facing change, and being non-judgmental if you're doing this with your team, and embracing the mistakes or the recyclings or other things that happen, are part of helping us anchor new change and growth. And sometimes that's where epiphanies happen, and we get the greatest sense of also traction in that. That oftentimes influences a lot more people than the initial change, especially people who think that leopards never change their stripes. They're naysayers, right? That don't think that we can really make the change, right? That's when they really might have that influence of their wait and seers, And so if you're dealing with a team, or if there's even a part of you that feels like you're waiting to see, that can oftentimes come into play. So how does this all shift and change and help you if you're wanting to figure out how to make change easier? One, it helps you because you can use that process to move through the ideations you're having around what you would like to have different. Now, nothing changes here that you want to know what you don't want, and you want to know what you absolutely do want. And you want to build out the vision and understanding of what you do want to a much greater degree than all the things that you don't want. Last week, you learned something about the signs that we're stuck. And the signs that we're stuck is that we are so attached or passionate about making sure that the details of the story of what wasn't working are captured when we communicate them to somebody. And that's absolutely just a sign that we're still sitting in it. We're still valuing whatever it is that we want to let go of more than we're valuing what we want. Move towards what you want. It's important to build that out in as many, many, many connections as you can make viscerally through all of your senses. Now, how does this help you in becoming easier? That's one. It helps you because you understand successful ways to navigate through cognitively and also using your intuition. So putting together logic and intuition to really look at how to sustain change, because that final step is sustained change. Where a lot of people stop is at that level or at that place where they're in maintenance. But from maintenance is where we get to shift and take that change and make sure it's inserted into your identity. So you get to become the identity of the person in that change, and then it's absolutely sustained because it's who you are. Now, here's the quick things that can happen. Here's the amazing things that epiphanies can do, and that what happens. One of the key things is to make change from the right venue. So what do I mean by that? And I'm actually curious to stop for a second and think about, what did you hear? What did that mean to you when you heard it? And just think about that for a minute. That might tell you something of where you're coming from. But the first thing that we're going to want to change is our behaviors or someone else's behaviors. Something external that's out here that we can then change. Make it about something else out here. Oftentimes that's where excuses come from. Let's change the excuses and all the reasons why this is happening. The next thing that you can do is you can pull that into this idea of your belief systems of why you're doing the things that you're doing, and maybe create a different belief system around all of those things that are happening, right? But to really get to your identity, I don't want to say it's a shortcut, because we still get to experience all the things, but we can do it so quickly that it doesn't have the same grinding effect, and it can feel more freeing if we just go right down to the values. If I'm upset with someone and I come at them in an aggressive manner to find out what is happening and why something went the way it did, what am I valuing when I do that versus asking them some questions, right? I'm valuing my point of view. I'm valuing what I think is right without investigation. I'm valuing my reaction that I had to whatever happened. And I can go through a list of thinking about that. And if I come up to somebody from a place of understanding and kindness and misunderstanding, confusion, not certain, curiosity, then I'm asking questions and I'm trying to learn what's happening. And maybe there's a perspective I haven't considered that I get to jump into and think about differently that gets to change everything about it. And now I don't have to go through this at all. But what am I valuing in doing that? Well, in this, I'm valuing resolution. I'm not valuing the problem. I'm valuing the solution. I'm valuing the individual. I'm valuing my choice to behave in a way that I am managing that's best for me. Because what's best for me is calm, kind, encouraging. When I get taken out of that zone, I'm not valuing the same thing. So the way to have all of these problems change quickly is to honor a new value. There's a lot of other details of what happens there as far as when different emotions or thoughts or things come up. That can be nuanced, and the stages of change planning can actually help you get through that. And there's many other ways to chart and graph and make decisions. There's circles and squares and boxes and you just Google on the internet time management or decision metrics or anything else, and you'll just get flooded with tools and resources. The idea is what works for you. And what if we didn't need a ton of tools and resources? Just the right one showed up exactly when we needed it. So if you need a tool or a resource, can it just show up exactly when you need it? Maybe not even when you think you want it. Man, I wish I had. And then when I need what it is, it shows up. Change does not have to be a grind. And if you know what you want and you know the identity of the person you are in that fulfillment, in the having, you can assess and think through what are the values that you have in that new way of being as you're visualizing the state and visualizing the result of what you're doing. If you're even visualizing what potential problems you might have in that new change. What problems you won't have anymore, and what problems you might have or think you would have in the new change. And what if you were able to design a life for yourself where you just didn't have problems? They were opportunities or exciting challenges to overcome or whatever else it is that you get to design based on your path and your desire of what you like. If you like solving things, you might like problems because you can solve them and check them off. And that's perfectly great. That's really okay. If you don't like problems and you're not big into solving things, you might have a different thing you want. You get to choose and you get to decide what you want and what you want to design for your life. And this is how it works. And if you're in one behavior, if you're in one way of living that you don't like and you want another, that can be done. You can absolutely design the new way of living that you're looking forward to and make that happen. And there's science backing a lot of it, but there's also understanding of how the mind works and how decisions happen and how managing our behaviors and our words is important. But most of all, you can make a lot of things happen quickly. When we throw this up on a chart, it's really interesting to see all of these actions and behaviors outside with all these beliefs, and all of those things are protecting certain values. And you change the value, and poof, all these things circling around it change very quickly because you changed what you're valuing in a situation. All of a sudden, things that you've been chasing that were problems over and over and over and thinking, why do I have to keep repeating this, are no longer an issue. They're gone. They're vanished because you have a different sense of value that doesn't any longer include that frustration. I hope that this has answered the questions of the people that have sent me DMs and the client who asked me to really get on here and talk about change. If not, let's keep this conversation going. Let me know if you would like to join the Designing Strengths group on Facebook. I haven't spent a lot of time in there, but I'm considering spending more time in there to at least check weekly and talk through things and have different types of feedback and collaboration in there. So if you want that, let me know. We can get that cooking here probably in the next month. And welcome to the world of change. You are on the path of greatness, and it is fantastic to be here. And that is the point with Jeff Spikes. You guys have a great day. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. The greatest compliment you could give me is liking, loving, and sharing this episode with all your friends. So please, if you're on Spotify, iHeart, or iTunes, leave a 5-star rating and review. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Make sure to tag me. I love hearing from you, the listeners of this show. The links for all my social and iTunes are in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to engage with me in anything related to my coaching, consulting, speaking, or programs, please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.